have two brief announcements that Malcolm and Doug have already heard twice before, but we'll make it for the benefit of everybody else. One is that DOE has decided that we're going to remove the quorum requirement for committee meetings. So in the grand American tradition, decisions will be made by those who show up. So that is what we're going to be doing from now on. Another announcement that I want to make is that Jim Folk's term of service as DDFO has come to an end. We thank him for everything he's done for us over the past couple of years, and we welcome him, Amy Boyett, as our new co-DDFO to join Michael Michelanis. So she's here tonight. Everybody say hi to Amy.
Hi, Amy.
Hey, I woke up in D.C. this morning about 3 a.m., so if you see me nodding.
So with that, Greg, whenever you're ready, let's take it away, sir.
All right, folks. Thank you for being here tonight. Look at the good turnout we've got. I'm very pleased to see everybody here. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you to our CAB staff that helps us out and keeps us going and does such a great job. Thank you to our DOE folks for coming and keeping us going and giving us the information we need. And again, Amy, welcome and congratulations on your new position. We look forward to working with you more. So I am glad to be sitting in for Narendra tonight since I'm the vice chair. There have been questions about him. From what I know, I think he's doing well. He's out gallivanting and seeing the world or doing something fun like that. So I'm glad he's doing that, and I'm glad to try to help out with this if I can. So unless anybody has any comments or thoughts or anything, I think what we'll do is go on ahead and get started. We're going to do our point of contact status update. And Sunny is not here tonight, so we're sitting in for her is going to be Pat Suggs. So Pat, it's all yours.
Thank you, Greg. I assume this is on? Yeah. So for the liquid waste program, is this too loud?
No, in fact, you might even want to bring it in closer.
Okay, for the liquid waste program, we've just finished fiscal year 19, so we have many accomplishments to report tonight. At DWPF poured 35 canisters in fiscal year 19. In total, SRR has poured 4,207 canisters out of an estimated 8,121 canisters since the start of operations back in fiscal year 1996. The facility is currently undergoing maintenance and installing necessary modifications to support the startup of SWPF. In canister double stack in fiscal year 19, SRR double stacked 193 canisters, and modified, which is to remove crossbars, 180 positions to allow future double stack. So far in fiscal year 20, SRR has double stacked 29 canisters and modified by removing the crossbars 16 positions. In total, 738 canisters have been double stacked and 992 positions modified. MCU, the mission of the modular caustic side solvent extraction unit and the actinide removal process has now come to an end. On June the 4th, both facilities were shut down in order to be de-inventoried and tanks and transfer lines flushed, which was necessary to make the ARP MCU transfer lines available for SWPF. Multiple transfer line modifications are being made to allow the final tie-ins of the SWPF transfer lines. ARP MCU served as well as a pilot facility, providing countless lessons learned for the successful operation of SWPF. ARP MCU, after operating for 11 years, and of course we originally expected to operate it for 3 years, successfully processed almost 7.5 million gallons of salt solution with more than 404,000 gallons in fiscal year 19. At Saltstone, the Saltstone production facility is currently undergoing maintenance. In fiscal year 19, Saltstone processed more than 730,000 gallons of decontaminated salt solution, and that resulted in more than 1.1 million gallons of Saltstone in fiscal year 19. The evaporators in the tank farm, the 2H and the 3H evaporator, Those two evaporators reclaimed more than 1.4 million gallons of space in fiscal year 19 and more than 868,000 gallons during contract extension 4. So that's since the 1st of July. The 3H evaporator is currently in an outage as the facility prepares to perform salt dissolution in tank 37. That's the drop tank for the 3H evaporator system. For the tank closure cesium removal, which we generally call ticker, ticker is not currently operational due to failure of the transfer pump in tank 10 while attempting to do salt cake dissolution. Activities to replace the transfer pump are in progress and will enable the remaining dissolved salt in tank 10 to be processed through ticker. Transition to tank 10 for source through processing through ticker will follow. In total, more than 200,000 gallons have been processed through ticker since startup in January 2019. For Saltstone Disposal Unit 7, all SDU 7 construction activities are proceeding on schedule. All 14 floor placements are complete. All 25 wall placements are complete. All 208 column placements are complete, and 5 of 7 roof placements are complete. Next, we'll begin wrapping SDU 7 with 341 miles of cable by December. For SDUs 8 and 9, the subcontractor has completed the excavation, the proof roll, and the perimeter drain system for SDU 8. The lower mud mat is complete and liner installation is in progress. For SDU 9, site preparation is underway. For liquid waste readiness for SWPF startup, the liquid waste system is on schedule to complete SWPF tie-in activities by November 19th, with DOE reviews expected to complete by Thanksgiving. For SWPF itself, the project continues to make progress with the startup and commissioning activities. We are currently in the cold commissioning phase and expect to have that completed in November. Successful completion of the cold commissioning test will enable us to proceed with operational readiness reviews and then into hot commissioning. We expect the SWPF project to be completed on schedule and within the total project cost of $2.3 billion. We are confident in the safe and effective commissioning, startup, and eventual operation of the SWPF to further build upon the department's strong track record of addressing tank waste at Savannah River. For the solid waste program, 2 TruePack 2 shipments of legacy contact handled true waste were shipped in August for a total of 21.8 cubic meters of true waste shipped to WIP in fiscal year 19. SRS and the WIP are also completing readiness assessments and safety basis related tasks to allow use of the TruePack 3 before the Nuclear Regulatory Commission license expires at the end of the year. That concludes my update. I'll be happy to take any questions.
All righty, thank you. Thank you, Pat. Committee, questions for Pat?
In the beginning, you talked about
Can I get you to use a microphone so that we can record it online? Thanks.
in the beginning you were talking about this tank. I could not get the idea about the original tank and modified tank. So what is the modified tank?
The canister double stack. The canister double stack, is that the
Yeah.
question?
Yeah.
So we are able to put 2 canisters in the same vertical position by removing some crossbars in the middle. And so that's what we do. You can't, of course, place 2 until we've remotely cut those crossbars out. Did that answer?
No,
the
but
question?
what is the modified tank? Yeah, modified tank.
What is the modified tank?
Yeah. You said, the tanks were modified and you gave me a number about modified tank. I didn't understand that. What do you mean by modified tank?
So, was it regarding MCU?
No, in the beginning, liquid waste operation update, when you gave that update,
Mm-hmm.
you talked about modified tank.
There's the modular caustic side solvent extraction unit,
No.
which we've just shut down and flushed. Okay.
And in the DWPF section, it says the facilities undergoing maintenance and installing necessary modifications to support SWPF. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
That's in the
Okay.
first of the bullet points.
Yeah. So, so DWPF also has some modifications in order to support. They're bringing purge rates and other capabilities up to handle the rate of SWPF. So all of that is being done right now so that we're ready when the time comes. Yes.
Doug, let's go to Doug. Doug was up next, I believe. Go ahead, Doug.
Doug Howard Cap. The ticker you said is down right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's due to mechanical problems.
It's a transfer pump failure that's down in the tank. It's not associated with the ticker unit itself. They fail, and it did. So they've got another pump ordered, and then when it's received, it'll be installed.
Okay, do you have any idea how long that would take?
Excuse me, Jeff Bentley, DOE. Right now, we're forecasting around March of next year to have the pump back replaced and able to operate again.
So is Doug Howard Cap, is most of the time from you getting the replacement pump from wherever you're ordering it from, or most of the time it's going to be just being able to put it on properly?
The reason for it taking that long
Right.
is, right now there's a lot of work. If you've seen the pictures before that have shown in the ticker presentations, you can see the congestion that we have on the tank tops.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, they're in the process of removing the lead blankets, the shielding that they have up on the tank top so they can get to the pump. And then you've got to remove the pump itself. I believe they have a spare pump to go, but they need a mast that they have to build that to put on the pump before they lower it down. So because of that, that's pretty much why it's going to take you out to March.
Last question. Is it possible or even feasible to have a spare hose available on site, or is that something like not possible?
Well, we got this. I look at that. I mean, we have spare pumps. The mast, I'm not sure we can. Somebody's. I don't know if I don't have anybody here who's really the expert on the tank farms, but I'm almost certain that the mast, each mast probably has some sort of variation depending on the riser that you're going to go down into. So I don't know if you could have spares for every single pump that we have, but it's something I could look into. But yeah, because that's the pumps are interchangeable, but the masts are more of the custom piece.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Malcolm, I believe you had a question, sir.
Yeah. I just a comment, Malcolm Phillips of the of CAB. Perhaps a follow-up comment with regard to what Doug said. I assume then that what you have on your spare parts list, you have failure data, so you're having spare parts on site based on failure data that you have in your program. Is that accurate? I'm guessing it's accurate.
Yes, we do, and we have a critical spare list that we also, that we maintain. I can tell you that, right now there's we've got a lot of these things on order, and there's a long lead time on a lot of these pumps. And when we have these failures, that then occur unexpectedly, we end up borrowing, if you will, from one of these ones that are on order, and then that pushes, we have to put out another order for to replace that one. And it just seems like we're always trying to catch up. But yes, we do have a critical spare list that we maintain parts for.
Well, if the question was a little more than just a critical spare list. It was, is that based on failure data that you have that then you order and you have on site what you need, what is critical?
Well, yeah,
based on failure data, and what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, life expectancy would go into that if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, but there's a difference between a manufacturer life expectancy, which is different than on site in the environment life expectancy. So failure data is obviously.
Yeah, that's what they're looking at. Their life expectancy that they have for pumps is based upon being in a radiological environment, not straight from the manufacturer.
My question or my comment. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. My question or comment, though, at one of the last meetings, James, I listened to the update, and I'm saying, I've been here, 6 months or so, and so I went around to people that had been here a short period of time, and some people that had been here a long period of time, and I asked, are you following this? Can you follow one of these updates where they're just kind of going and hitting facts, and throwing out acronyms, and the response that I got back was a smile with, of course not. Well, if it's of course not, then the updates need to be modified so that people can follow them. I mean, really follow them. And maybe a suggestion would be sending us beforehand the topics that you're going to talk about with the acronyms put in, because you're popping acronyms all over the place. Thank goodness you didn't say ORR instead of Operational Readiness Review. But there was a ton of acronyms that we aren't catching, and you gotta know it to get into it. So there needs to be a way that we can process the information that you're providing in some way that it's meaningful to us, so that we can get it and understand it better. And right now, I thought it was just me because I've only been here a short period of time, but talking to senior people here too, same thing. Now, my question had to do with your licensing. NRC licensing expires. Was that on TruePack 2 or TruePack 3 that the licensing?
TruePack 3.
So 3 is going to be expiring. Are y'all in the process of then seeking an extension, or is that?
Well, our preferred approach would be to make the shipment before that date, and then we would have, if not, and that's working with WIP there at the receiving end.
But is TruePack 3 going to be what you're going to use downstream as well?
Yes, we'll be making TruePack 3 shipments also.
Okay,
in the
so
future.
I guess you're going to go through the extension process for a
That's
TruePack
right.
3 license.
We'll be shipping with that method for a while.
Yeah. So the TruePack 3 license and extension then is in progress. So y'all have submitted the application or something for the.
Well, I am not an expert on TruePack exemptions, but I believe making the shipment helps contribute toward that process, so that it's
when the license expires, there's got to be an extension granted. It's
correct.
A paper process that you file an application for it. But you aren't aware of the application having been filed or the extension having been.
I believe that making the shipment before the exemption expires helps extend the coverage. Now, we can ask the question of someone that's more expert than I am, but my understanding is the preferred approach is make the shipment. That helps with the license.
Is that legacy true waste, or is that new true waste?
I don't have that defined here, so.
All right. Committee members, other questions? Ladies, you guys got questions? No? Okay. All right. Narinder sent questions. So let me cover Narinder's questions real quick. Regarding the ticker, about getting economic data for the project, which was promised in an earlier meeting. have we generated any technical and economic data regarding justifying a second unit, ticker unit?
Jeff Bentley, DOE. So as of right now, the data that we've accumulated has been on what we've processed out of tank 10. That's given us operational data that's helped us a little bit as far as running the unit. However, it is nowhere near adequate for us to make any economic assumptions or conclusions with. That data will be collected as we process the material from tank 9. By the time we get through tank 9's material, we should have more than adequate amount of data to suggest whether or not it's economically feasible to go on with a second unit.
All right, thank you. And the second question was about the salt. His second question was about the Saltstone project. Grout has a lot of waste. Is there any way to remove excessive water from the vault, and how is it reused? What's the timeline for the curing of grout in the vault? Got any takers for that one?
I actually have a volunteer.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
like volunteers too.
Thank you. This is Aaron Staub.
Aaron Staub, SRR. Can you repeat those again? There were several
Sure.
of them.
He referred to you specifically, Aaron. He said it's questions about the Saltstone project, which was presented by Aaron. Grout has a lot of waste, I believe, or it could be water. Maybe it's water. Is there any way to remove excessive water from the vault? And if it is, or how is the water reused?
Okay, so there's probably two related questions he's touching on there. One of them is sources of water other than what's coming in from the waste that we might be adding through flushing or startup and shutdown of transfer pumps and the process itself. Because if I'm adding water that's not waste, I'm not maximizing the amount of waste I'm putting into the process. I think that's one of his questions. And so what I would say is there are some inefficiencies in having to start the process up, because you will want to start the process up with clean solution so that we do not send any untreated waste out to the disposal unit. However, we have been very rigorous over the years to try to improve our process control to minimize those periods so that the bulk of the volume that we're sending is treated waste. There will be some benefits as we transition to SWPF operation where we are going into longer and more continuous periods of operating. So it's not 6 hours or 8 hours at a time, but it's 24 hours or 48 hours at a time where you're getting much more period of time that's waste operation than it is transitions into startup and shutdown. There may be another question in there as to what I would term as like effective waste loading. How much salt can I get into a unit volume of salt stone? And I would say I think we're probably fairly close to maximized on that. It's if you look at any sort of volume of saltstone, it's really about half waste and half dry material. And we have done some studies to see are there ways that we could adjust the process chemistry to improve that, and it doesn't look like there's a lot of efficiency there. His last question about reprocessing is we do have the capacity for the flush water that we add to be collected. We have on all the SDUs what we call a drain water collection system. That material is collected and transferred back to the facility for reprocessing, and typically that is less than 1% of the total volume that is sent to the disposal unit. It's a fairly small amount of water.
Okay. And there's another question, I think, related to what's the timeline for the curing of grout in the vault?
That is a fantastic question because it depends on what you mean by cured. The phrase cured has a very specific connotation when you're talking about structural concretes. And there are ASTM standards that define, they would use the term set, initial set and final set. that doesn't really matter all that much in terms of what the facility cares about. What the facility really cares about is how long can fresh slurry sit in a transfer line before I cannot easily resuspend it and getting moving again. So that basically is how long can I have some sort of process upset before I need to get the transfer line emptied so I don't risk having a bunch of solidified material in there. We generally call that gel time, and that's on the order of 45 to 90 minutes, depending on typically what the hydroxide strength of the salt solution is. There is another thing that we care about, which is in our safety analysis, which is at what point is the saltstone no longer a risk from a spill accident scenario. And what we have said there is that it's 24 hours, that after grout has been sitting stationary for 24 hours, it is no longer able to be resuspended and spilled. And then what we would consider to be a set for a lot of our testing purposes to establish a standard for looking at grout performance, that's generally 28 days. And that's consistent with commercial practice for evaluating the structure and performance of concretes. So that's a complicated answer to what sounded like a pretty simple question.
It is. I'll try to get that back to him. So
Okay.
I may or may not have luck. He might get somebody for more questions.
That'll be fine.
So okay. Anything else? All right. I want to follow up then on. So I guess this is the same vein as Malcolm's questions. Pat, you listed lots of accomplishments, and sort of as Malcolm suggested, it's sort of hard for us as amateurs to sort through some of this stuff. What are the of that list of accomplishments that you guys have made? What are the one or two or three that you think are the most important, are the most significant, are the most positive?
We're proud of everything we do.
Of course.
It's an exciting transition year. I'm very proud of MCU and its performance over the last 11 years. It gives us a great deal of confidence in the technology. It's exciting, having made it this far, to be making the transition to SWPF. And I'm sorry I didn't answer your question very well about what specifically the modifications are at DWPF. Maybe we can, I know they're increasing ventilation rates and things like that because there will be a much higher receipt rate at DWPF when it's receiving the radionuclides from SWPF. So they have to be able to interface at that much higher rate than MCU's been operating at. So it's an exciting time to be moving into the big facility and the rates that it will be processing at. It's going to be, we can expect a startup year. They're always troublesome, but it's, I think, the beginning of some real significant large progress in emptying the tanks and making cleanup progress. So all of the things we do are important. We don't not worry about any of the facilities. Saltstone will be processing faster. We're making those modifications. Everything's going to have to be operating at much higher rates. So we have to think ahead of what's needed. What do we need to do to make certain everything can support the same high rates? Very interrelated system.
Okay. And on the other hand, what are some of the things that we as citizens should be vigilant about and watching over to make sure it's going the way everybody thinks it should be going?
Well, you may, during future updates, hear us express frustration as we have a pump fail at a critical point and we have to replace it. It's a startup year. I'm certain we'll be able to resolve the problems that occur, but it's a well-known fact that startup years are challenging. So safety will always be paramount. That's just a value. So we'll do what we need to do all the activities safely for the workers and for the public.
All right. Of course. course. Go ahead, Malcolm.
As you asked of Malcolm Phillips Cab, as you asked the first question, another suggestion that I would have with regard to the presentations made is if you could give a little more data with regard to schedule. In other words, what you're doing right now is you're saying, well, we did this many gallons or this many canisters or this many something. In the abstract, that's, I don't want to say meaningless, but are you on schedule is a more cogent term. You know, what is that against schedule? What is that against what you're planning? And where you're behind schedule, then that obviously is the question, here's what we anticipate doing to getting back on schedule, or here was a problem or something that gives us some understanding of that better, versus just the whole data of, okay, we've done this many gallons or this many that's, that doesn't mean anything vice schedule.
Okay. Anything else? Good questions for them tonight. All righty. Thank you, Pat.
You're
You've
certainly
done a
welcome.
great job. All right. Now I'm showing. Next on our agenda are our committee discussions. I guess we're going to start with the liquid waste operations update. Do we have anybody who wants to give a brief just a real quick summary, or we? No?
If you can remember from past discussions, if you have some specific questions on what's come in the
Okay.
past, or over the presentation, anything that's lingering, any questions that you feel maybe didn't get answered completely at the full board meeting,
Okay.
this would be a good time. And if you want to do them one at a time, or the presentations as a whole, however you want to manage it.
Okay. Yeah, what James says.
Okay.
Okay. All right, committee, you got questions? Doug?
Doug Howard Cap. This is a personnel question in regards to the liquid waste program. I know you said it would be very challenging this coming new year. With that being said, personnel-wise, how many personnel did you lose this past year, and how many are you gaining to help maybe things go a little bit smoother?
I don't know. That we may have to just take the question.
Other questions? Malcolm, please, sir.
The Malcolm Phillips Cab. With regard to the long-term disposal in your concrete structures, the question that I had, I think at one of the meetings, the last meeting, had to do with how long are we talking about, and I think the response that came back, we're talking 100,000 years or somewhere in this vicinity to have structural stability for that length of time. And I went and talked to some people behind the scenes just quickly and said, what studies have you got that you're looking at that for long-term stability of your concrete? And the comment was, well, that's a tough area because there's not a ton of experts that talk about long-term 100,000 years studies. And so I assumed that WIP would have done those things too. Have y'all made any more progress in that area to try to get the experts that are able to speak into that area?
If you're, I really like the volunteer idea.
All right, Larry Romanowski with SRR, and the group that I'm in, what we look at are the performance assessments. And I don't know how much background this group has had. So essentially for saltstone disposal facility, and this holds true also for the waste tanks. So as we grout the waste tanks and close the tank farms. So we do our performance assessments where we do just that. We look at, by the DOE order, it's what happens at 1,000 years. And then there's performance objectives of dose to a member of the public, dose to an intruder, stability, those types of things. Under NDA 3116, in our interactions with the NRC, who is monitoring essentially DOE's disposal actions, they look out to a 10,000-year period. But then we also look out beyond that, what we call chasing the peak, so how far out into the future. And so so in that it is modeling, and you're right, there's lots of assumptions on what goes out. And we are continually doing R&D to update our assumptions. You know, for example, we've gone out to academia. We've got some folks doing the expert here in the country on closure caps. What are infiltration rates into closure caps? We've gone to several universities to get their projections and their assumptions on concrete degradation. You know, what happens to concrete over X number of years? After how many years do you start treating it like gravel, as far as infiltration, as opposed to, a nice strong concrete? And so we make those assumptions. We continue to do R&D. And then what we do in the PAs is we look at those properties and can kind of do some one-off modeling to see how important is that property. And so what we try and do is, if we go ahead and say degrade concrete, because we aren't sure, say what will happen in 50,000 years, what happens if it does just turn into gravel? Does it have a big impact on the actual dose, or is it really not that important? And so we take our R&D, with what budget we have, and try and focus on those things that are most impactful. Then on top of that, the NRC, through their monitoring role, is looking at RPAs. That really is their monitoring activity, is the disposal actions relative to saltstone, and their main focus really is that performance assessment world. Mm-hmm. What do they think of our assumptions? They do some of their own independent research at the Southwest Research Center to try and match up with ours. And so it's really a continuing, ongoing evaluation of what is the latest information available. Because again, it is assumptions looking out into the future, but then going outside of just ourselves into academia, Savannah River National Lab, Savannah River Ecology Lab, several universities have done work for us as well. So it's just a continual thing that as new information comes up, we'll go roll that in and see what those impacts may be.
But I assume that what y'all did initially, though, you had certain accident analysis. Accidents may be the wrong word, but akin to an accident analysis where you make certain assumptions, and based on those assumptions, in rainfall and here's
yes.
Here's
so
what's going to be the boundary dose of the person that drinks the water or whatever. I mean, all of that's listed someplace. Is that the EIS, or is that
no? That is
safety
so in the
report?
performance assessment.
Okay.
Essentially, so what we are looking at is it's a model, and it's all, again, what's our final closure state? So we kind of put it into the closure state. It's got a cap. We have assumptions for all of the different materials. What is the average rainfall? What's peak rainfall? And it's just that. You start modeling it, and as it infiltrates into, like the saltstone in the case of SDF, goes on through, say, the bottom of the SDUs, hits the groundwater, starts moving. So we look at, generally you're looking at a dose at 100 meters from the boundary, 25 millirem to a member. And there's a whole bunch of scenarios then for what does that person do? It's someone who builds a house, and these become in the NRC regs. There's some very specific things in the EPA regs. The person builds a house, they drill a well, they feed their livestock, they grow their plants, they drink X amount of water, they take a shower, they swim. Yeah, so all of that gets factored in, and that's all in the performance assessments. Mm-hmm. Bottom line, looking at what is the dose to a member of the public, what is the dose to an intruder? So that's a person who comes in for more of just an acute, comes in one time, does something, gets a dose. So those are what the PAs then look at and continue to get for DOE orders. Those are continually updated. You have a PA, if you learn something new, like they put out new meteorological data, we go do a special analysis to see, well, does that change our conclusions? Yeah. And so the performance assessments, and like I said, we've got one for Saltstone, we've got one for F-Tank Farm, we've got one for H-Tank Farm, and that's where all that information.
Is this the same place where you have accident analysis? I assume you have like 50-year floods, Max, and you have a 737 or 747 plowing in?
Two separate things.
Okay.
Yeah. So you got two things. You've got the performance assessment, and the performance assessment is looking at down the road. So it literally is after the end of institutional control. So it is, I'll take Saltstone. Saltstone's done. It's got a cap. DOE maintains control for 100 years, and then it gets turned over to the public. So this is all more, what is the radiological or chemical type doses downstream? The documented safety analysis, which I'm not as familiar with, is where you're getting into what are the things today? When you look at something in the PA and you learn new information, it's usually not quite as, I'll say, critical to current operations because you aren't there yet. So you go look to see if you need to start adjusting things. The documented safety analysis, safety basis, is where the things you're talking about of, accidents that could happen today, things that could happen today, things that could have real, impacts on, safety today. And those are two separate
That's in the
analyses
SAR,
that take place.
That's in the SAR, the safety analysis report, is that what that's?
Right. And so those are two separate things. We kind of treat them, we go about reviewing new data in a similar manner, but again, today's accidents, DSA, future impacts in the performance assessments.
Yeah, we had said it at one time, James, I think at the last meeting, that would be, I've started to use the word fun, but I'm certain that's the wrong word. It would be interesting to kind of delve into that a little more, the analysis of what's shaken down, what the assumptions are and what may occur, because that's what the population is kind of interested in. What may break down, what may not break down.
I can potentially volunteer another one of my cohorts. And I know in the past that the CAB has gotten, we call it PA 101. It's a presentation on what is a performance assessment, what goes into it, what are some of the, I don't say accidents, what are some of the scenarios that get looked at, what are the objectives that it's trying to meet, what are some of the assumptions that go into it. And so it's kind of been a high-level PA 101 that I know in the past the CAB has gotten that presentation, and it's something that, DOE asked us we could definitely offer up.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. We've got about 5 minutes, it looks like, before public comments. I guess I'll ask a couple more questions, and then we'll go to the public comments. Is there anything, since y'all have made these presentations to us, that's come to mind that you want to tell us about, or anything like that? We've had these presentations for a while now. You might have thought, oh, I should have talked about that. Nope. Okay, that's fine.
I'm looking at the ones who made the presentations back then.
Okay. You guys all right? All right. Is there anything, so based on the CAB meeting and tonight, is there anything we should have asked as a CAB that we didn't ask?
You sound like a reporter.
Well,
Is there anything you want to
that's,
tell me?
well, I mean, we should have asked. Again, it kind of goes back to Malcolm's question. This stuff is very technical for us, and you guys deal with it all day, so you, of course, know how to delve into this stuff. Sometimes we don't always appreciate it the way you do, so there's stuff that we miss that we should ask about. You got one? Doug?
Hey, Greg.
Yes, sir.
Doug Howard, CAB. And this may be way out there somewhere, but with everyone talking about climate change and lots of flooding going on throughout various places in the United States and throughout the world, I'm sure you all do assessments if for some reason this area would be flooded. Do you model those and what could possibly happen?
We absolutely do. This is Amy Boyett, CAB. We absolutely do, but I'm not sure we have the right people in the room to talk about that. It's done from more of a site-wide standpoint. I don't know that it would be specific. Did you want to offer an answer to?
Just Larry Romanowski, SRR. I can speak kind of just to the PA side of it, and it is that, because there's uncertainty, along with what would be, I'll say, the standard compliance case that you look at a PA. You look at a bunch of different scenarios of what would happen if, I'll say, the rainfall, they may look now and they would say compliance case is the 100-year rain. They will look and say, well, what if that doubles? What if that triples? What if that causes the erosion of the cap to be completely gone? So look at it kind of from that perspective versus trying to predict very specific things. It's kind of how do each of those different barriers help you? What happens if they're gone? And then what conditions might that kind of resemble as far as covering any future? Again, that's just in the PA, the performance assessment world.
One of the ones that I remember was at one of the nuclear power plants, we had to do a maximum credible flush from the Johns. If all the Johns flushed at the same time and sunk the water, what would that do to the systems? So it was the maximum credible flush, which was interesting.
Amy Boyett again. I have an answer to your question, Doug, on how many personnel are lost and have we lost and gained. Savannah River Remediation, as you know, is our liquid waste contractor. They have about 2,500 employees right now. and they lose about 10% a year through attrition, so around 200-ish. They hired 235 people last fiscal year, and right now, no impact on their mission. They say that they actually have more employees on the rolls right now than they've had in the entire time of their 10-year contract, and that's really to prepare for SWPF, and they've added a shift for training as well.
Thank you.
All right, looks like we're at our public comment time. Do we have any public comment? I didn't see if anybody signed up. James, did you recall? Nobody signed up?
No, we don't ever do a sign up at the committee meetings.
I wrote around the comments, I'll get
Okay.
some questions.
Come on up to the.
You want me to ask them and let somebody else answer? Or?
Okay, we can do that. Sure.
We've got, what, 8 tanks closed at the Savannah River site?
Hey, can I actually get you to stand up and state it for me?
Because they're recording everything, so they.
Yeah, and so if we don't get in the microphone, then we.
Bill
don't get the
Lawless.
recording.
How many tanks have been closed at SRS? And I counted 8. What's the next tank to be closed, and when will it be closed? How many tanks have been closed at Hanford? I think that's still 0. I'm not sure. Is that right? And when do they expect to start? Okay. That's been the answer for 20 years. How much transuranic waste, legacy waste, do we have at the Savannah River site that's not been shipped out yet to WIP? It was a question I was referring to.
At least 13.1 tons.
I know the definition of high-level waste is being reconsidered. When is that going to take place? When is that going to be finalized, or has it already taken place? And what impact is that going to have on the vitrified high-level waste canisters in the glass waste storage buildings?
We might want to take a minute and let them answer some of these, and then we can
Sure.
always do some more if you have some more questions. We want to come up, and so at least we get a recorded record of some of it. So the first one was, I understand there have been 8. Come on,
There have
somebody
been 8.
please come up and answer their
Based
questions.
off of, if we don't have the folks
Well, it's
available in the room right now, Bill,
It's
can
in
you
the
maybe?
chart. You can always get me an answer.
Yeah, I was going to
Oh,
ask
okay.
you, if you'll give them to me, we can send it back
Sure.
out.
Okay, all right, that's fine then.
All right, the other questions, so have we started reclassifying the vitrified high-level waste yet? I think the answer to that is probably no. But is there a date certain when that's going to begin to take place? And have we begun to work out arrangements with WIP to transfer some of those vitrified high-level waste canisters to WIP? Is that still an ongoing possible operation? You've been at 4,200 canisters, vitrified high-level waste for a number of years. Is that vitrification stopped? What's going on there? I know you were shifting over to the SWPF, but we've been at 4,000. I think the ceremony for 4,000 canisters was like 5 years ago, so it seems to have pretty much stopped. And how much space is in the glass waste storage building? How many more canisters can be put out there? And what are the plans for future storage? Is that another glass waste storage building, or are they going to try to take care of the shipments to WIP? But there's an infrastructure. If that's true, there's an infrastructure question that's hanging in the background there. And I think that's been estimated there roughly 2,000 canisters that can be reclassified. I think that was an informal estimate, and I'd sure like to know a little bit more about that. Is that, you got it all?
Yes, yeah, since we record the meetings, but I will ask you, since you have them written down,
I've got them right here.
you've got them there. Get with me later and
Okay.
let's get those. Or if you want to email them in, that might be
I can
easiest.
send you an email tomorrow.
That would be great.
And where do I send the email? Just to the SRS cab
Yeah, if you'll do
notice?
that one, we'll get it.
The SRS cab meeting email?
Yes, sir. If you'll
Okay.
send it to that one, we'll get it.
Okay. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, thank you for your comments. Any other comments, questions, suggestions from the public? No? All right, looks like we're getting close to the end. Anything else from the committee members? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to make another, this is Amy Boyett, DOE. I just wanted to make another comment for Bill. A lot of the questions that you're asking are things that we have publicly gone over, multiple times with the CAB. For example, on the redefinition of high-level waste, Mark Senderling from DOE headquarters came to a board meeting and gave a presentation in July in North Augusta. So many of these questions have already been answered, and we would just need to go back and take a look, or maybe you can go back and look at some of the video in the meeting minutes to address a lot of those questions. But we'll certainly take the questions and get you the answers that we can, but a lot of the information's already out there.
Well, thanks, Amy. I appreciate that. I think that I asked the questions also. I know that's true, and I've been following it the best I can. But part of this is good for the CAB members to hear, because when I was on the Citizens Advisory Board, we pushed for these things to happen. And it's taken well over a decade, but this is a success that the SRS citizens deserve. Like, we also made the first recommendation to close the high-level waste tanks at the Savannah River site in 1997. So these are parts of the success that the CAB is responsible for. If I were on the CAB, I would push hard to know what's going on with these canisters. How come very few more are being vitrified? What's going on there? And what's the space issue is a really critical question. And the true waste legacy. It was a huge issue before the cabs even started. And most of the legacy true waste from the Savannah River site is gone. It's at WIP already. And that's an extraordinary change. And I guess the final comment I'd like to make is that these changes came about because the citizens at the Savannah River site around the area have demanded action from the Department of Energy. You should never worry about whether you're pushing on them in the right way. Push on them, beat them like a drum. You want to get things out of here as soon as possible. The vitrified high-level waste is a serious issue, because right now you're building a repository on the surface of the earth. It's not 2,000 meters underground. It's not 2,000 feet underground. It's not in Yucca Mountain. It's on the surface of the earth. And there's a really good chance that vitrified high-level waste will never leave. So it's up to guys and girls and people like us who are going to have to push this stuff, get the Department of Energy to shove that stuff out of here. And you just can't take no for an answer. And by not doing that, by pushing acceleration, we've had a lot of success compared to Hanford. Hanford hadn't even closed the first high-level waste tank. They haven't even started up their DWPF. We got the technology from Hanford for our DWPF, and that was 1996. That's been 23 years ago. So there's a lot to be proud, but part of being proud is pushing to get more success. Don't rest on your laurels. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, committee members, last shot for tonight. Anything else? Sir James, any concluding comments?
No, sir.
Any reason I shouldn't adjourn us?
No.
All right, folks. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. And we are adjourned.